Prime Minister ending the year on a high.
This is a landmark day for the environment in this country. It is also a good day for business in this country by providing more certainty.
Member for New England.
As the Coalition's disintegration continues apace.
If you're here, this is the ejection seat. It's about as far away you can get from the dispatch box. And if you're sitting here, they want you out there.
The National Party's third defection in 3 years, this time perhaps en route to One Nation, has bookended the Coalition's annus horribilis.
I actually was asked directly to leave. So you get to a point where you think, am I just going to continue on being the discordant note, or am I going to get out?
Who asked you directly?
Peter Dutton, twice.
I'm disappointed, incredibly disappointed that he's left the party, that he's resigned from the Nationals, a party that gave him his entire career.
By contrast, the government has landed a blockbuster deal with the Greens to fix Australia's broken environmental protection laws, delivering faster approvals alongside a new environmental watchdog and the first ever national standards. The Senate rushed to pass legislation ending 5 years of failed attempts to act on the recommendations of a review by the former competition regulator, Graham Samuel.
Absolutely delighted. I think that Minister Murray Watt, the Prime Minister and Sarah Hanson-Young have reached a very sensible conclusion.
Months of intense negotiations in which the Environment Minister kept alive the option of a deal with the Coalition as late as last night, ended with a Greens tick of approval. The minor party winning amendments that deny fossil fuel projects access to fast-track approvals and an effective end to native forest logging.
We are the party that should be considered the partner for any government that is serious about climate and environment.
The reaction from business has been mixed. The Business Council called it a missed opportunity. The biggest critics are the coal and gas industries, who say it will slow access to cheaper energy, while others described it as the best deal possible, given the government convinced the Greens to accept a less onerous definition of what are called unacceptable impacts, which is a trigger that allows the minister to reject damaging proposals.
Look, for the minerals industry, it's pretty good.
Warren Pearce represents smaller miners, particularly in the critical minerals sector. He says projects that currently take 4 or 5 years to approve could soon be done in just 3.
There may be many in industry who are suspicious or sceptical of a Labor Greens deal, but if you look at the full package of reforms, it actually does deliver on the better for environment and better for business mantra that has been part of the government's approach.
Susan Lee called the outcome a dirty deal that will drive up energy prices. And she accused the government of not acting in good faith as the negotiations reached a climax this week.
I didn't receive an offer from the Prime Minister to meet. In fact, I texted him after question time and that text remains unanswered.
Ultimately, Lee's complaint about missed messages doesn't explain why the Coalition and business groups who urged her to work with Labor on an alternative deal ultimately fell short. A familiar face returning to Parliament for an official portrait unveiling, delivered a blunt explanation.
They could have played an active role, but they chose not to. And I can tell you, what few supporters they have left in the business community will just be horrified.
In the end, as a senior government minister told 730, the Greens just worked harder to get a deal than the Coalition, which has been distracted by its own headaches. With Parliament today taking on distinct last day of school vibes, even an attempt to end the year with a reminder of Labor's failed promise to cut energy bills was brushed off by a buoyant Prime Minister.
Order. Trying to paper over the cracks in the Coalition.
Well, Murray Watt is the Minister for Environment and joins me now. Minister, welcome to the program.
G'day, David. Good to be with you.
So the Treasurer said his preference was for a deal with the Coalition on these environment law changes to ensure bipartisanship. This was the preference of every business group. It was the preference of the West Australian Premier as well. Why did you ignore those pleas and do a deal with the Greens instead?
I wouldn't say it was so much a matter of ignoring those pleas, David, but in the end we cut a deal with the group who was actually willing to do a deal and was capable of doing a deal. I've said myself that there would have been some benefits in being able to do a deal with the coalition, the major parties of government working together, but equally what I was focused on is making sure we actually got something done. And through this deal that we've done with the Greens, we've been able to achieve the balanced package of reforms that I always said we needed. Wins for the environment, wins for business, and frankly the coalition has been a complete shambles throughout these negotiations. It was unable to cut a deal.
Let me ask you this, were you also worried that if you linked up with the coalition, the Greens would then be accusing Labor MPs of having no credibility on the environment?
Look, I'm sure the Greens would have said things like that, but that wasn't a factor in my decision or the Prime Minister's
Politics
decision.
didn't weigh on this at all?
No, we were always focused on how we could deliver that balanced set of reforms that Graham Samuel recommended 5 years ago and that the country needs. If the coalition had been capable of working out what their position was and not having multiple people negotiating with different requests, maybe we would have been able to do a deal with them.
They say they were negotiating with you late last night, woke up this morning, found out that you'd now struck a deal with the Greens.
Yeah, and we were continuing to work with the coalition into the night last night. We were very confident by that stage that we would probably be able to get there with the Greens. But
So
you know, of course, no, I wouldn't say that. I mean, you always keep your options open in case something goes wrong. But you know, even yesterday, I had a meeting with 3 different coalition shadow ministers to try to work out what their combined position was. That is not a way to conduct a negotiation.
Let's go through a few specifics. The government, we know, wants more gas. The market operator keeps telling us we need more gas, we might face a shortfall on the East Coast. This is all part of your future gas strategy as well, to get more gas. And yet here you've agreed to a Greens demand blocking any fast-tracking of gas projects. Why?
I wouldn't say that it's about blocking any fast-tracking of gas projects,
so there could be some
but certainly what we have done is block a number of new streamlined assessment pathways for coal and gas projects. However, we expect all projects, whatever they are, coal, gas, critical minerals, housing, renewables, to benefit from a range of the other reforms that we're making to approval processes.
Well, this is interesting. This is not what the Greens are saying.
No.
So you're saying that this will deliver faster approvals for gas and coal?
I think there is every ability for a gas project in particular, if it has its documentation ready in the way that's required and has done their environmental surveys and all of those kind of things, to access some of the pathways that will be quicker for all projects. What it's about, though, is saying that probably the best example is the national interest approval, which has been quite controversial. A project would be able to get an approval even if it didn't meet environmental benchmarks in rare circumstances. We were never going to use that for a coal or gas project.
And you won't use the streamlined approval either. And this is what the gas industry is worried about. They say this is going to entrench slow approvals, drive up energy costs, deter investment, further delay the gas Australia needs. Why not fast-track gas decisions?
Well, I mean, the reality is that we needed to secure support from one side of the parliament or the other to get these laws through. There were a number of things the Greens asked for that we said absolutely not. We're not prepared to do that. But there were some that we were prepared to entertain because in this instance, there are still ways through the broader reforms that we're making to approval processes that all projects will be able to be sped up.
Let me ask you about another concession to the Greens. Will your deal end native forest logging?
Absolutely not. And I know that right now we've got Coalition and Greens people out there claiming that is the case. It is absolutely untrue.
So is the forestry.
There are some elements of the industry, not all elements of the industry are saying that.
And they're all wrong.
Well, frankly, they are, because I challenge any of those people to point to anything in this legislation which says that native forestry is going to end. What we are doing, as recommended by Graham Samuel and as recommended by Robert Hill, the original Liberal minister who introduced these reforms, these laws in 1999, they all said it's a problem with the Act at the moment that forestry under regional forest agreements is exempted from any of the standards or any of the rules under the Act. So what we've done is say that forestry is an important industry that should continue, but it should comply with the same rules that mining does, that renewables do, that housing development do, and I'm very confident that the industry can meet those standards.
The industry has a very different view. They say this is going to make them unsustainable. There's a big demand for hardwood timber still in Australia. We'll end up importing it from Indonesia and Brazil.
Well, I don't agree with that, respectfully. What we are asking is for forestry that occurs under regional forestry agreements, which includes both native forestry and plantation timber. It's not just native forestry. If it's undertaken under those RFAs, they will need to meet the same standards that every other industry needs to meet. Now, we constantly hear, and I used to be the forestry minister, I know people in the industry really well, they're proud of the standards that they say they meet.
You want this industry of native forest logging to continue?
Our policy is to not shut down native forestry, so we do want it to meet higher environmental standards, the national standards, and the industry says that they can meet high environmental standards.
Final one, business will now need to disclose under these new laws their climate emissions and their plans to mitigate those emissions. To what end? What will this data be used for?
Well, the particular benefit of that, David, is that it will give us early visibility for applying other government policies such as the safeguard mechanism for new projects that are coming online that have large emissions. So, as you would know, the safeguard mechanism only applies to the heaviest emitting projects, things like coal mines, smelters, those types of things.
Will this now mean for other projects it could, down the track, be used to stop them?
No, it can't. We've made very clear, and I've said in the chamber debate today, that information won't be taken into account by a minister when they're deciding whether to approve a project or not.
So why do you need to do this?
Because, as I say, what it will do is give us early visibility of the projects that are coming online that are likely to trigger the safeguard mechanism and likely to need to be required to reduce their emissions, and it enables us to start working with those proponents at a much earlier stage. Again, it was a recommendation from Graham Samuel. We thought that on balance his reforms were worth following in almost every respect. It will enable that application of the safeguard mechanism, but it won't be taken into account around approvals.
Now, it's been months of negotiation. Environment Minister Murray Watt, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, David.